So, anyway, welcome to IGA. So this is the Institute for Grassland and Environmental Research. This research institute has been here for about 20 years, hasn't it, Gary? And there's a strong emphasis on understanding what's done to intensively managed grasslands, particularly from an agronomic perspective. So understanding how we, or farmers, land managers, use the land and what the impacts of that land use are on environmental quality. Now there's a lot of different research done here by, I think, between 40 or 50 scientists, isn't there? And there's an ecology, what are the names of the three groups, because they've just changed, haven't they?
Atmosphere and climate, soil and water, ecology and biodiversity.
So there's an emphasis on, in the first instance, interactions of the land with the air, so you know, wet and dry deposition of nutrients on the land, how they're then moved around the land. Of course, inputs from the land or from the terrestrial system to the atmosphere, so that might be methane, you know, there's a lot of cattle, a lot of livestock around here, degassing, you know, issues and interactions between the atmosphere and terrestrial phase. There's also a strong emphasis on the ecology, so that's in-stream ecology, but also plant ecology. There's research being done, a whole range of research being done into what are the best types of vegetation to grow in these sort of landscapes, different types of grasses. And we might go and look up at the Supergrass project, actually. That's just to briefly fill you in on that, that's a project which is looking at the effects of different species of grass on retarding or slowing down overland flow rates, so movement of water over the land surface. Supergrass.
After the band.
It's not an acronym, no. It's just I won't make a comment on about that. But anyway, and then there's a third group who really have their emphasis on soil and water. There are a bunch of soil scientists, people who also interact with people like myself, hydrologists, people who are nutrient specialists, so they're interested in the effect of movement of nutrients, but also pollutants, pathogens from the soil, from the landscape, into our surface waters. And really today's work is going to be focusing on that area of the research that's done by IGA and other collaborating scientists like myself and a whole range of others. So we can talk more tonight about literature that you can read. There's a lot of work that's done by the guys who are working here in collaboration with a wide range of people. But what we'll focus on today really is looking at three different sites. Now the first of these is Little Burrows. It's not very far from here, just a short walk, and it's a site where Gary's been doing some experiments over the summer. We'll talk more in detail about specifically what those experiments were trying to achieve. Little Burrows isn't just a platform for the sort of experiments we'll see. There's also a Met station up there, isn't there, Gary, which has been running for quite some time. So there's a lot of background information on meteorological variables, which of course is very important if we're thinking about rainfall runoff and, you know, inputs to this terrestrial system.
It's also got sort of atmospheric chemistry as well. They do there. And it's part of this. It's called Environmental Change Network.
Environmental Change Network. If any of you are interested in getting online and just Google Environmental Change Network, you will see that, as the name implies, there's a network of Met stations, terrestrial stations, in-channel monitoring stations all over Great Britain, where data have been collected, quite high-resolution data as well, since the early 90s now. I think this one's been set up since about 94 or something, isn't it?
93, yeah.
And you can, if you, as students or researchers, you can go onto this site, you can have a look at the data sets they've got, put in a request, and the data, and you can then be sent the data for free. So actually not long term, but kind of getting towards long term, sort of medium term time series of environmental variables, which I certainly used during my PhD, very, very useful. We're going to move on to Rowden. So we'll look at some small scale experiments, very reductionist in their nature. we'll then move up a scale to the 1 hectare spatial scale, to the Rowden Experimental Research Platform, which we actually just drove past the end of the road to get. This is an interesting site. It's been running since the early 80s as well, principally to understand the hydrology of drained versus undrained land. So drainage of these intensively managed landscapes is a key issue. It's one of the key links between our soil and our water. And so it's one of the things I really want you to be thinking about when you're spending the time out in the field today. How does this drainage really affect this link between soil and water? How does it create interactions between the quality of the soil and the quality of the water? And also be thinking about why it's there, what's there. Does something be better for the soil quality, worse for the soil quality, or would it be any better for the water quality, or would it be worse for the water quality? So we'll visit Rowden and we'll have a good stop there. We'll also look at this supergrass site, see what we can see. That's a 30 square metre scale experiments, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that's kind of in between what we'll see at Little Burrows, what we'll see at Rowden. Then we're going to have lunch, and depending on the weather, we'll either have it outside, or there is quite a nice pub run by one of the local farmers, which is an experience in itself, actually, I should say, looking to do the work. But it might be worth popping our heads in there. We'll have a quick chat, see if they've got room to accommodate us, if we're really cold or it's started to rain or something like that. That's on the way to Den Brook, which is a 48 hectare research catchment, so the next spatial scale up. And there we're going to look at a real life scenario, how this land is farmed, and you're going to have the opportunity to spend probably 3 or so hours wandering around this catchment, sketching, and I would really emphasise the importance. Probably thus far you've just done a lot of note taking, I imagine, but this is going to be much more about capturing what you're seeing and understanding in quality field sketches, annotating those diagrams, labelling, and probably coming back to them this evening as well, and really putting some effort in to build literally a picture of what you're seeing, what you've learned out in the landscape. We'll spend quite a bit of time there. We'll have a kind of a session talking about what's important to look for. Suffice to say, unlike yesterday, where we saw lots of good examples in some ways of best practice, it's almost the opposite, isn't it, really? You're going to be seeing perspectives on soil and water quality that are maybe somewhat negative in a sense. You may be seeing lots of evidence for how not to manage the soil and the water in a sustainable kind of way, okay? But obviously that's a good way of learning by our mistakes. And I would hope also that you get some sort of perspective, from the farmer, from the land user's direction, because that's all important in these